For week 2, we will discuss the ecological conditions for animal invasions. Due to the limited dispersal abilities of animals, certain species are restricted to certain regions where they are able to interact with only those species with which they coexist. The limited geography of species is responsible in part for the fantastic array of biodiversity around the world, the Philippines included. On the basis of presence and absence of animal species, the Earth can be divided into the zoogeographical realms that we know now. Last week, you have seen how globalization and human movement have paved way for the movement of some animals into areas they were not previously found. And of course, some of these species, not all, have successfully established but have negatively affected the new environment and are thus termed invasive. Now, what are the ecological conditions for successful invasions? Can animals successfully become established in any habitat? Or do animals have to have specific traits? Let's take a look at habitat quality first. Studies have shown that habitat quality plays a major factor in invasion success. Land use change brings about habitat degradation caused about by vegetation clearing. If you take a look at the photo here, you will see that the forested areas have been cleared to make way for agricultural areas for cropland and grazing areas. The forests have been fragmented, which will decrease habitat availability for native fauna due to a decrease in habitat heterogeneity. Mountains offer more habitats for native fauna. As you can see here, the vertical stratification of a tropical rainforest provides a rich array of habitats for animals. However, logging and vegetation clearing paves the way for whatever is in demand. Like right now, tropical rainforests in Malaysia are being cleared for oil palm plantation. In the Philippines, we also see agricultural areas like this that are further being turned into residential or commercial centers, which are deemed more profitable. Studies have shown that land use change or loss of native habitat are factors that increase invasibility of an area. Habitat modification increases abundance of invasive species because they are able to utilize the matrix habitat, and they may also spill over to the native habitat. So are all habitat types vulnerable to animal invasions? What do you think? In terms of aquatic habitat, are there differences between marine and freshwater habitats? Would islands differ from mountain ecosystems in terms of invasibility? Let's take a look at some of the hypotheses. So according to Elton, introduced species often fail to invade communities because strong biotic interactions within native species hinder their establishment and spread. More diverse resident communities, generating more biomass and using resources more completely, would resist the establishment of invaders. And maybe due to complementarity in the use of resources among species, or to enhance probability of including highly competitive species at high diversity levels. The biotic resistance hypothesis does not only take into consideration habitat quality, but also the traits of the native species and their interaction with the environment. Thus, invasibility is greater when an exotic species does not have to compete with residents or natives for resources. Any factor causing a temporary increase in resource availability will increase a community's vulnerability to invasion. The fluctuating resource hypothesis predicts that pronounced fluctuations in resource availability will foster community invasibility. The assumptions are that an invading species must have access to available resources. And the second assumption is that a species will have greater success in invading a community if it does not encounter intense competition for these resources from resident species. High resource availability can occur either because the rate at which resources are supplied from external sources is faster than the rate at which the resident or native assemblage can use them, or because the resident assemblage's use of resources declines. Shown here are the transitions an introduced species has to go through to become invasive. From the time of release, the alien interacts with the invaded ecosystem, including native or other alien species, if present. The condition in these environments and their interactions with the species present, along with other factors such as the species traits, determine whether they will become established. It is believed that species traits enabling successful completion of one transition might be different or might even deter a species from completing another transition in the invasion sequence. Both the biotic resistance and fluctuating resistance hypothesis state ecosystem instability as a factor for invasibility. How about the invaders themselves? According to this study, invasibility of alien animals is increased the higher the number of individuals released and the higher the number of introduction events. The year of introduction did not seem to affect invasibility. This is again from Collar and Lodge and shows the relationship between characteristics of species completion of invasion transition, that is, from establishing to becoming invasive. If you look at the data for birds, you will see that findings showed opposite associations between transitions, at least in some. Birds were more likely to become established if they were non-migratory, but they were more likely to become invasive if they were migratory. Also, birds with higher body mass were more likely to become established, whereas with a lower body mass, they were more likely to become invasive. And generally, birds tended to become established and invasive if the invaded ecosystem had similar temperature or habitat as their area of origin and had more broods per season. Let's look at more specific studies that examine animal invasiveness. In New Zealand, studies on birds revealed the following characteristics: nesting habits, sexually selected traits, migratory behavior, clutch size, body mass, behavioral flexibility, and feeding innovations. Aquatic ecosystems differ from terrestrial ecosystems due to their high connectivity to other ecosystems, high frequency of human access, for example, for transportation or recreation, and high disturbance due to the tendency of humans to inhabit near water systems, especially freshwater systems. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of alien invasive species in this ecosystem. The golden apple snail, Pomacea canaliculata, is a freshwater invasive alien species. It has rapid growth, high reproduction, and easy maintenance. So these are the eggs of the golden apple snail, and you may have seen this especially in rice fields. And these are the adult golden apple snails. The golden apple snail do not survive salty, alkaline, poorly vegetated aquatic environments with high desiccation risk. So these are the barriers. And the favored conditions are repeated introductions, a tropical climate, and integrated and flood-prone drainage systems. The janitor fish, formerly identified as Hypostomus plecostomus, and which are now present in Laguna de Bay, Pasig River, Marikina River, among others, consist of two species, Pterygoplicthes disjunctivus and Pterygoplicthes pardalis. So these are the South American sailfin catfish which originated from Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru. And they were imported as a helpful fish to clean algae and debris in tropical fish aquariums. So I remember when I was young, and that was a long, long time ago, we were fascinated by this janitor fish. And we knew very little at that time about the species. So look at us now. This has become an invasive alien species in most of our fresh water bodies. Now, these fishes are able to endure varied fluctuations in flow systems of water, and they resist hypoxia due to structural modification in their gut. They also have the capability to acclimatize in varied environments. And their janitorial skills attracted many aquarium owners. Gambusia affinis, or the mosquito fish, feeds on mosquito larvae, and thus the name. I guess you are also familiar with this. It's a live bearer. It spawns throughout the year, and it feeds on zooplankton. This is abundant in canals, rice fields, and other water bodies. Collectively, the most widely distributed freshwater fish in the world. It prefers waters with temperatures of 31 to 35 degrees centigrade, and it prefers shallow waters, approximately 8 to 15 centimeters. In an interesting study on sociability, some researchers studied several personality traits: sociability, boldness, activity, and exploration. And they found out that sociability was an important indicator of dispersal distance, with more asocial individuals dispersing further. So that's an interesting study to study the behavior of this invasive alien species. There are more characteristics of invasive alien animal species, and you will be doing your own research on that. So just a heads up, you will be asked to submit a term paper about 3 species from terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, both marine and fresh water, preferably those found in the Philippines. One of those that you will present will be the invasive traits of this species. So we will talk more about this when we schedule a Zoom class meeting. In the meantime, proceed with your learning activity. Thank you for listening and have a productive week ahead.